Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, humanoids of all descriptions, welcome back to the North 40. If you've been following a firearms series since its beginning, and especially since we started live firing, you've heard me say something like that once a month. And some of you are perhaps wondering, how did I get to where I am now from always having to look for a place to shoot? So we're going to talk about that this winter, and the ultimate objective here with this part of the marksmanship series is getting into how I plan and run my yearly two-gun invitational, which I've done for 10 years now. As always, when we talk about firearms, all firearms are presumed loaded until proven otherwise. Fingers off the trigger until you're ready to intentionally discharge a shot. Know your target and what's beyond it. And you have a responsibility to everyone within range of your weapon to know its condition. The first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put the camera and the tripod in the truck, and we're going to have to take a little bit of a road trip to show you where I used to shoot and why it's now closed to shooting, and talk about the other factors that led to me pursuing becoming a landowner. So, like a lot of young guys who got out of the service at the end of Desert Storm when the Soviet Union allegedly broke up, I decided that I was interested in getting into law enforcement. Jail work was not really my preference at the time, although it is where I ended up. And one of the things you have to understand about whether you're working patrol or in a correctional setting is that firearms are part of what you're doing. And marksmanship is a very perishable, life-saving skill. And so I began looking for places to shoot. Clubs are very problematic. You have to wait until they're having a membership drive. Then you have to apply, and the membership committee has to decide if they like you. And of course, they're expensive. And as, at the time, a poor college student, I was making $6.80 an hour as a sergeant doing bank security and no health insurance. Free is extremely attractive, and what this is state land. Now, I said that this is no longer open to marksmanship. And if I can get zoomed in on this sign here, you'll see that quite clearly it says no target shooting. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of uncivilized behavior that went on out here. And when I say uncivilized, I make reference to my previous video in the Army Story series, I Need an Adult. People are very willing, unfortunately, regardless of who they are or where they're from, to behave in selfish and irresponsible ways, and unfortunately also unsafe. This area here had a 200-yard berm to shoot into. This was the first part of this facility that was closed. Somebody irresponsibly chucked around over the berm with a large caliber rifle, and it ended up on a 55-mile-an-hour state truck route just north of here. Because many people who don't have a military background, or even some who do, unfortunately, don't understand just how far rifle ammunition will travel. And the other issue that we had out here was trash. And not just regular household type garbage. We're talking tires. I've seen glass 5-gallon water cooler bottles, stereo equipment, pallets, one of which I stepped on. Thank God I was wearing my spike protective jungle boots that I got in the Army. A lead acid battery left behind and shot full of holes, and one of the berms had the hood from a full-size late 80s, early 1990s vintage pickup truck propped up against it, shot till it was Swiss cheese, and simply abandoned. There were warnings from the state, signs posted, which of course were shot full of holes, that if it didn't stop, this place was going to be closed to marksmanship. The state simply does not have the budget, whether they're gun-friendly state or not, and we are not. Whether it's DEC or NCON or DNR, they don't have the budget to keep cleaning up after uncivilized people. And the mess continued. And eventually, this place obviously was closed. There were 4 ranges here, a 200, a 100, which was just over here behind the camera, a 150, and a 25. Now, I made the determination for myself to stop shooting here long before this place was closed. And this again goes back to other people who were using it and their selfish, unsafe behavior. I was on the 150. I had a very nice Peerless grade Fulton Armory M14. I was done shooting for the day and I was going to go police up my target. There were a couple of people who had gone and occupied the 100-yard berm. I made eye and voice contact with them. I made sure they understood that I was about to go down range and police up my target, bring it back to my truck, and leave. I was about even with their 100-yard berm, and they started shooting. What the hell do you say to people who do something like that? There's no talking sense to them. They don't believe they're doing anything wrong. But when I see somebody with an AR-15 and a scope this big on a regular AR-15 on top of the carry handle, and they still can't hit anything at 100 yards, I know it's not worth talking to them no matter what they're doing. And so I determined again that I was not going to come back here. And I started dealing with realtors looking for land. And the jail type facility where I was working, because of its proximity to a small city and its proximity to a 4-lane expressway, we didn't have a range of our own. We were using other ranges and they weren't open to recreational shooting. So I was in a real pinch. And for quite a while, I only shot my issue sidearm at quarterly firearms qualification. So that's the deal with this place and why I ended up dealing with realtors. Let's go back to the office and talk about my misadventures dealing with realtors. Well, welcome back to the orifice here in the house where the marksmanship series started. So I want to talk now, finally here at the end of this video, about my experience dealing with realtors while I was trying to buy land. They're problematic. So realtors desperately want to sell you something, and they're a business to make money, and they don't make money if they don't sell. Because they work on commission. Usually, at least where the state where I live, that commission is about 6% of the value of a piece of land. So over the years, I dealt with 5 realtors, and I didn't buy anything from any of them because they weren't specialists. I didn't know this. You need to find a specialist realtor who deals with large rural properties. And even then, one of the things you're going to encounter is as desperately as they want to sell you something, they can't miracle a property for you. If that was possible, you could just go ahead and pull out your own magic wand and go, bing, there's 500 acres I can shoot on. So the first thing you need to do is you need to decide, are you just going to shoot pistol? Are you going to shoot rifle? Are you going to shoot shotgun? What are you going to shoot with your shotgun? Is it going to be sporting clays? What are you going to do? Because that in part is going to determine how much land you really need. My recommendation to you, this is going to hurt some feelings, is that because of the minimum requirements, the minimum legal requirements to discharge a firearm, let me restate that. There are minimum requirements for distance from a firearm being discharged to any dwelling or structure not owned and occupied by the person discharging the firearm. In the state that I live in, that distance is 500 feet. So you need 500 feet plus your firing line. Plus you need room for an impact area. My recommendation to you is that if you go to talk to a realtor, you tell that person that I need a minimum of 50 acres. And that's a lot. It would be even better, because sound travels so far and because bullets travel so far, if you had 100 acres. And you can start to see how problematic it can be and why so many people settle for joining a sportsman's club. As I said, I didn't buy land from any of the 5 realtors that I dealt with. They couldn't wrap their heads around what I was looking for. That's the first thing. The second thing, and maybe this is just me having a negative experience with them, most of the realtors I dealt with gave me the impression that if an unmarried man walks through the door, they have a button under the receptionist's desk that they push, and they bring out, oh, well, we've got these printouts of all these properties or these crappy houses that we can't sell to anybody else. They tried to sell me everything but what I was looking for. I wanted to move from where I was, a 45-minute commute, one way to work. I wanted to move from there closer to the facility where I was working. I wanted land. If there was property with a house on it, one of the things that I wanted was a ranch of no more than 2,000 square feet. They said, oh, okay, sure, we'll write that down. Well, they tried to sell me everything but that. And no one had the decency to show me a property. They just hand me printouts and off you just go look, figure it out. Okay, well, I'll figure it out without you, and you're not going to make a commission. And if that sounds bitter or frustrated, well, it's the truth. I was. So one of the things that I did was anytime that I talked to somebody, I would bring up the fact that I was looking for a large rural property that would be friendly to being an outdoorsman, a sportsman, and marksmanship activities. And bingo, the owner of the gym that I used to belong at before I hurt my back said to me, well, you know, my father owns the remains of the family farm, and it's not that far from town. It was a 15-minute drive from where I was living, close enough to my elderly parents that I could get there in case of an emergency, and there's been an emergency, but far enough away that I could have privacy. So I bought land, and I got this land for a steal, because again, the old man just desperately wanted to get rid of it for a price that he could get to pay off the mortgage on the house his wife was living in. So that's how I got this land. I rented out to a farmer who was now a different guy than who was farming at the time. We have an excellent written contract. He writes me a check once a year that doesn't bounce. I never have to get my lawyer involved to deal with him. And these are all things to consider if you're going to be a landowner. His rent check doesn't pay all the property and school taxes, but it goes a long way to defray that cost. All right. Next month video, we'll go ahead and get into preparing to put a range in and to bring out the other officers from the facility where I was working and to host a shoot here. And the things that I had to take into consideration and the potential pitfalls of bringing people onto your property and how to manage them and their expectations. So we'll see you next month.